Recorded Books presents The Private Life of Spies and the Exquisite Art of Getting Even by Alexander McCall Smith, narrated by David Rintoul. Author's Note: These stories are part fiction and part non-fiction. In Nuns and Spies, one of the common legends of World War II, that German spies were dropped into England dressed as nuns, is explored. For further discussion of this widespread belief, see James Hayward, Myths and Legends of the Second World War. Donald and Yevgeny is based on the life of several historical characters, including Archie Clark Kerr, a British ambassador, and Donald Maclean, a British spy. There is a very informative biography of Clark Kerr, Donald Gillis, radical diplomat. This biography addresses the question of the unlikely Russian valet Yevgeny Yost. For further details of the career of Donald Maclean, reference may be made to Roland Phillips' excellent A Spy Called Orphan. Finally, on the Vatican Secret Service, see the exhaustive treatment of the topic in The Entity by Eric Frattini. There is an immense literature on the filioque controversy. The history of this remarkable issue is discussed in A. Edward Sichinski's scholarly The Filioque, History of a Doctrinal Controversy, Oxford Studies in Historical Theology. Nuns and Spies, England, 1943. Konradin Müller was an unusual spy. He was recruited in Hamburg in June 1943, much against his will, and sent on his first and only mission in late September that year. He failed to send a single report back to Germany, and when the war came to an end in May 1945, he fell to his knees and wept with relief. "I never wanted any part of this," he said to his friend, Sister Cecilia. "This whole awful, disastrous mess. Never." She knew what he meant, and she believed him. There, she said, patting his wrist, as she often did when things became too much for him. There, dear Konradin, all over now. The Lord works in mysterious ways, few can doubt that, but he usually achieves the results he wants. Of that there can be no doubt whatsoever. "I have much to thank the Lord for," he said to Sister Cecilia. "For this place, for you and the others, for everything that happened to me, I am constantly grateful." And he was. His gratitude, in fact, knew no bounds, and he reminded himself each morning of his great good fortune. He had been a spy in wartime, and had it not been for the kindness of Cecilia and all the other sisters, he would have met the grim fate that such spies meet. He owed them his life. He owed them everything, in fact, and one day he hoped he might be able to repay them. They were kind English people, and he would not hear a word against the English. Not one word. Until that fateful day in 1943, Konradin had lived a blameless, if somewhat dull, life. He was the only son of Gustav Müller, the owner of a small printing business, and his wife, Monika, a piano teacher and an invalid. Gustav was an alcoholic and unreliable. Monika could walk, but could do so only with difficulty. She relied on Konradin to do the shopping and the housework. When not helping at home, Konradin, who was naturally gifted when it came to foreign languages, had a part-time job teaching English to science students at the university. He also taught occasional classes in Spanish and French, although English was his main subject. He had studied for 3 years at King's College London before the war, and before returning to Germany had taught for 2 years at a boys' boarding school in Devon, a place of bizarre traditions and minimum academic standards that went bankrupt when Konradin was on the staff. These 5 years in England meant that he felt perfectly confident in the language, a fact that unfortunately caught the attention of a local Abwehr colonel, whose brother-in-law was a professor of physics at the same university at which Konradin taught. On the outbreak of the war, of which the Müller family thoroughly disapproved, Konradin was 38 years old. Men of that age were being taken for military service, and Konradin was interviewed by the local recruiting office. The interview, however, was conducted by a retired army officer whose wife was distantly related to Konradin's mother. This relative had explained to her husband that Konradin was the most dutiful of sons, and that
Sample complete. Ready to continue?